Madam President, I rise to talk about coal miners and the promise, the obligation that the United States government has to coal miners on a range of issues, but especially when it comes to their pensions and their health care. Many Americans remember Stephen Crane as the author of the novel The Red Badge of Courage, but he also wrote something that not many Americans have read probably, but I did because it was about a coal mine near my hometown of Scranton. And he wrote it just before the turn of the last century. And the pertinent parts for me in terms of his description of what a coal mine looks like and all the dangers that are in that kind of work, his words were as follows. In describing the mine, he described it as a place of inscrutable darkness, a soundless place of tangible loneliness. And then he went on to catalog in horrific detail all the ways that a miner could be either killed or could be adversely impacted by his work. So I'm thinking about those dangers today when I speak about what coal miners have been through over many generations and what they confront today because of the pension issue we're going to discuss today. And I'm grateful to be joined by Senator Manchin of West Virginia, Senator Brown of Ohio, Senator Warner of Virginia, and Senator Wyden of Oregon. Senator Wyden, as the leader of the Democrats on the Finance Committee, worked to have a hearing on this issue. And it was back in March, and I had the pleasure at that time to meet two Pennsylvania coal miners, Tony Bernczak of Masontown, Pennsylvania, Fayette County, and Dave Van Sickle of Smithfield, Pennsylvania, also Fayette County. Tony and Dave came to Washington to attend the Finance Committee hearing on pensions. So I want to commend Senator Wyden for helping us have that hearing, and also for his work in negotiating with Chairman Hatch to hold that hearing and his continued efforts to get a markup in committee. Those of us who attended the hearing heard United Mine Workers President Cecil Roberts testify about that promise that I referred to before, the promise that this nation made to our coal miners, and how the Miners Protection Act carries out or carries through on that promise, is one of the ways to fulfill that promise that we made to coal miners. At the time of that hearing, they were joined by mine workers from West Virginia, Ohio, Virginia, and Alabama on that particular day. Tony Bernczak, as I mentioned, from Fayette County, had a 40-year work life in the mines, starting in the mid-1970s at J&L in Bobtown, Pennsylvania. He's a member of the United Mine Workers Local 2300, and he's still active. He works at the harbor as a dockman now, and he's also a veteran. Dave Van Sickle, Dave began working in the coal mines about the same time, maybe a few months before Tony, so they're both 40-year miners. Dave worked at the Cumberland mine as a member of the United Mine Workers Local 2300, as is Tony. And over his 40 years in the mine, Dave Van Sickle has had numerous jobs ranging from 20 years working on the long wall. Miners know what that is. The long wall to working at the prep plant, and also doing all kinds of a range of other work in the mine. Dave Van Sickle lost a finger doing that work, and he lost partial use of his right hand as well as several other fingers. So there's a price that has been paid by him and so many others. These are very difficult jobs, and we know that the men and women, the women I should add, who descend in the depths and the darkness of these mines assume a substantial personal risk, and they work long hours. They stay in these jobs as long as they do, in part because they've been given a promise by our government, that when they retire, they will have a pension, and most importantly, they will also have good health insurance. So they're covered for the ailments they've sustained over their years of service. The Miners Protection Act, which Senator Manchin and I have introduced along with a bipartisan coalition of senators, allows excess amounts from the Abandoned Mine Lands Fund to be used to preserve both coal miner pensions and retiree health care as needed. In Pennsylvania, we have more than 12,000 mine workers that are impacted by this. To be exact, 12,951 mine workers in Pennsylvania who are counting on us to pass this legislation. Here's the breakdown in some of our counties. Just about 2,500 in Cambria County, Pennsylvania, where Johnstown is. About 2,100 in Fayette County, where Tony and Dave have lived and worked. 1,900 in Indiana County, 1,500 in Washington County, and 1,000 in Westmoreland County. Without passage of this legislation, something in the order of 20,000 retirees and 5,000 Pennsylvanians, their dependents or widows, could lose their promised lifetime retiree health care within a matter of months. Without the legislation, the UMW, United Mine Workers Act 1974 pension plan, which is the largest of the plans in the country, providing pensions to nearly 90,000 pensioners across the country, and of course their surviving spouses. That could be on an irreversible patch to insolvency by next year. Our coal miner men and women live on small pensions, averaging just $530 per month, plus Social Security. They rely greatly on the health care benefit they have negotiated and earned through their years of hard work in the coal mines. So these aren't just numbers, these are people, these are families who've worked very hard for Pennsylvania and worked very hard for our country. They have children and they have grandchildren. The federal government made them a promise, and we must not rest until we fulfill that promise. In 1990, a federal Blue Ribbon Commission, so-called Coal Commission, established by then Secretary of Labor Elizabeth Dole, found, and I'm quoting, that retired miners have legitimate expectations of health care benefits for life. That was the promise they received during their working lives, and that is how they planned their retirement years. That commitment should be honored, unquote. So said Secretary Dole's commission in 1990. It's important to note that the 1974 plan that I mentioned has been well managed, with investment returns over the last 10 years averaging 8.2% per year. So despite being about 93% funded just before the financial crisis in 2008, losses sustained during the financial crisis placed the 1974 pension plan on the path to insolvency. That is because the financial crisis hit at a time when this plan had its highest payment obligations. This, coupled with the fact that 60% of the beneficiaries are orphan retirees, meaning these are whose employers, I should say, are no longer in the coal business, and the fact that there are only 10,000 active workers for 120,000 retirees. That has helped to place the plan on the road to insolvency. The 74 plan's actuary projects the plan will become insolvent in the years 25, 26, absent passage of the Miners Protection Act. So we need to pass this legislation, and we've made it very clear to senators in both parties, and more recently to the majority leader, that we need to get this done. By making small adjustments to existing law, the bill will allow us to fulfill that obligation, that promise that I spoke of earlier. At the same time, even as we're working to pass the miners' pension legislation, we also have to be mindful of, and I won't spend time today talking about this in detail, but also be mindful of and keep working on miner safety and, of course, those affected adversely by black lung. So whether it's safety and health, whether it's health care itself or whether it's retiree benefits of any kind, but especially the promise that we made to miners with regard to their pensions. We have an obligation. This body needs to get on a track to pass this legislation before we leave here in July. So I'm honored to be part of this coalition, and I certainly want to thank and commend and salute the work done by Senator Manchin. I yield the floor.